I'm so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values, our feelings, or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another, I decided just to call them office hours, just like back in the old days, since it's going to be somewhat semi-weekly. Go ahead and bring back the office hours moniker. Again, doing the live streams for as long as I can do it, continue to do it weekly here. Talking about some of the things going on in pop culture, but also writing issues and whatnot. And I got, some topics lined up for tonight, but this also helps pay for the wedding. So that's always good. Just ordered my wedding ring the other day. They were doing this sale. I was showing Sound Engraver, and it's a Clark Kent style wedding ring. It's pretty sweet, pretty awesome. So that'll you'll see that flashing around the finger after October. Anyway, hope you guys had a good week or having a good weekend, enjoying your Saturday night. I've got quite a few people here. Thanks for coming and tapping in. Got way too many people to as usual, just to read all the comments, but I'll welcome some people. Ghost Planet Inc. looks like you were first. Welcome there. Sound Engraver, my dear Sound Engraver, of course. Horizon Talker, Final Fantasy, Brian Gilmartin, all the usual folks there. Vessel of Amala, Spidey Rules, Slav, welcome Slav. Getting food, but good to see me live. Oh, great to have you pop in. Chris P, welcome. Welcome, Crispy. Yeah, Lindea, Tom Spiegel. Good to see folks there. So, stress levels. So does anyone else find James Gunn aged rapidly? I think what happened was he was probably dyeing his hair for a while, and he just stopped. Sometimes people will do that. They dye their hair for a while, and then suddenly one day they just decide they're not going to dye their hair anymore. Boom. I know William Shallert did that. You probably don't know who he is. He was Nils Burris in the original Star Trek series on that episode, but he was Patty Duke's father. He was president of the Actors Guild and stuff like that. I remember I used to see pictures of him even in his old age with the brown hair, and then he came to a con once and it was just boom, white. So yeah, I understand what you're saying, though. It is kind of jarring to suddenly see him, suddenly just white everything. But yeah. So I do have some topics to talk about tonight, and hopefully I can remember all my thoughts and everything. These Saturday nights, it's a good night to stream, and I like it, and I'm going to keep up with it. It's hard, though, because it's with my week, the way they're scheduled, Saturday night is the time where my brain just starts to kind of like kind of settle, from being bounced back and forth, settle in. So I try to remember all the things I want to talk about, try to remember names and words sometimes. But yeah, because I end up dropping my daughter off, so I don't have her for this part of the week, but I've had her. She was sick this last week too, and it was a bummer. But then with the work week and everything, all the teaching and grading, Saturday night's the beginning of it for a few days where I just have to kind of, get my bearings a little bit. But I do want to talk about James Gunn. I've talked about him a little bit before, and I want to just kind of bask in the wonderful decline of the Mandalorian, which was so inevitable, I'll get to that in a second. And then also, people have been asking me questions. I've seen it in the comments and whatnot because I've been doing those shorts, cutting out shorts from like previous live streams or previous videos and whatnot. And when someone just asks a question, I can't get to it necessarily, but sometimes the same questions will keep coming up over and over again from different people, and they're specifically about writing and stuff like that. So I thought, oh well, let me address some of these. So I'll do that, and then we'll see. Maybe I'll cut part of this out as its own video or own, shorts. Again, who knows? So anyway, let's go ahead and get to it. Oh, there's my son engraver saying she's in and out of the chat. She's probably cooking dinner or something like that. I've been vocal ever since the beginning, ever since James Gunn got the job for DC, what a stupid idea that was. And I know there's this weird little, my Easter decoration just fell off over there. There's this weird little contingent of people that just want to rally around James Gunn like he's our savior. It's kind of like the weird little group of Henry Cavill's group of harem of Snyder bros that call them something. This is weird, like blossom of support that's unearned, that some of the people have just decided to give a person, and they give it to James Gunn, and it's usually for James Gunn. I find his political reasons. They don't like, for example, they think what happened to him when his horrible pedophile tweets came to light. They don't like that he was just canceled outright or whatever, because they don't like cancel culture in general. To say nothing of James Gunn being right into cancel culture and being Mr. Toe the line with the agenda there, like everybody else on Twitter was at the time. But he just ran foul of it. And it's certainly true. You can on that basis alone, though. Now, I'm not somebody who agreed that he should just be canceled and never shall show his face again in the world. But I also think that you don't pick somebody like that with that in their past in any way, especially in any way recently, and give them Superman. It just showed what a ridiculous. It just showed that Warner Brothers has learned nothing. I've talked about this before. I talked about it in the Fourth Age when I was on his channel too. Warner Brothers has learned absolutely nothing. The higher-ups never take into account who these characters are and who might be a good fit for the different characters. All they ever do was who made a good superhero movie recently. Tim Burton made a Batman movie. Put him on Superman. Put him on Superman. Yeah, yeah. Oh, Bryan Singer made a good X-Men movie. Put him on Superman. Put him on Superman. Yeah, yeah. Like, none of that makes sense. Chris Nolan made a Batman movie. He doesn't want to do Batman, Superman. Well, Zack Snyder did Watchmen. Put him on Superman. What? What bizarre parallel universe does anybody thinks that makes sense? And they're doing it now again. Oh, James Gunn, he made Guardians of the Galaxy were very popular. Oh, Suicide Squad, yeah, so hey, movies about villains and rogues and let's get that guy to do Superman. What? No, that's horrible. That's horrible reasoning. And Warner Brothers has just added again. It's their same old thing, their same old MO. And it shows. My dear sound engraver says here, is it fair to say Warner Brothers rewards bad people? I don't even think they're that smart. That's a good question. Yeah, they do, but I don't even think that's what they're trying to do. They're truly so clueless. They think, what? Someone made a movie? Oh, when it was popular? Yeah, get them to make our movie then. Like, zero thought whatsoever to maybe our characters are a little different. Maybe our characters deserve a different kind of consideration than the kind of consideration someone might have had to put into the Guardians of the Galaxy to make them a success. They have no clue. It's like a bunch of executives, like stuffed shirt executives who can't conceive of anything besides numbers. And it's really frustrating for fans. It's incredibly frustrating for fans. And it isn't just about, okay, well, he hasn't done movies like Superman. Because if that alone, you could still say, okay, well, people, Richard Donner had never done a Superman movie until he did a Superman movie, Who would pick the guy who did Omen necessarily to do Superman? So if it's just that reason alone, you might not have a full argument against James Gunn. But it's not just that reason alone. We can look at his plan for the DC universe to call the DC universe, to lay out a slate of films for the DC universe and call it gods and monsters, that right there shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what's great about the DC universe. Now, it's very logical for outsiders, people who don't really love the DC characters or that universe, to look in and say, yeah, I mean, their heroes are just, a lot of the heroes have sort of these godlike powers. Yeah. And there's like Swamp Thing. There's all so what's wrong with gods and monsters? That makes sense. That makes sense. Sure. To somebody who knows nothing about DC or why it's so wonderful, and nobody who cares about the characters might think that. Superman, the most godlike character, you could never tell Superman to his face, well, you're basically a god. He would not hear that. That's not how he thinks about himself. That's not how people in his universe think about him. People in the DC universe, they look up to these heroes. They appreciate that these heroes are there to save them. When George Perez did the Marvel DC crossover, that was one of the things that was a conflict between the two different heroes. The Marvel heroes were coming into the DC universe and going, these people are okay with you. And they're kind of, and DC heroes were coming into the Marvel universe and like, why are these guys your heroes, right? Why is the public against you so much? It's a difference. It's a fundamental difference in the universes. And it works fine. Either one of those is fine in their own universe. But this has been the problem with DC, whether it's the comics, the movies, the shows, or whatever. No one has just embraced that. The DC is a different universe. It works differently. You wouldn't look at the DC, if you were in the DC universe, you wouldn't look at your heroes and say, yeah, gods and monsters. So the very fact that he's even naming the universe or his slate of films, that definitely betrays a fundamental misunderstanding of the characters, a fundamental focus on anything that's good and really well understood about the characters. Professor Logos, good to see you here. Got a super chat from you. Thank you very much there. It says, I think no matter what, this new DC universe will fail to make money. People are sick of bad superhero movies and are tuning out. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And some people are saying that that's the superhero bubble. Oh, guys, this was fated to happen. The superhero bubble was going to break at some point. No, it didn't have to break. It didn't have to break at all. As far as the fans and people going to see the movies, you keep giving them quality content, they'll keep showing up. It's not about, there's this one thing can only be in style, but so long. No, if you look at the history of cinema, you see that certain movements like the film noir, age, or the Westerns and stuff like that, they stuck around and remained popular until the filmmakers themselves got bored with it. Once the filmmakers started being self-referential and kind of like self-mocking and, self-parodying a little bit, that's when the audiences got tired of it. And that's when they needed the next new thing to come along. And that's true. To go back and look at film history, that's true. And that has something to do with what I said last week about how, or one of the weeks previously, about how as a writer, you need to write for your audience. If you're a writer of Westerns and you're bored writing Westerns, hey, fair enough, then go write something else. Don't say, yeah, but I got to write this Western to make money. So I'm just going to kind of write a Western that's going to be more like a romance, and just kind of like, shift it away from. No, people are going to see that movie for a Western. Give them a Western. Stop trying to, subvert people into something that you just happen to feel like writing at that moment. Go write something different. Go write a different franchise if that's what you want to do. And that's what we've seen. And that's what we're seeing happen to superheroes now. The superhero movement didn't have to fail. The superhero movement is here crumbling because the filmmakers have gotten tired of it. You've had people come into power who are wanting to push their own agendas in these films. Hey, these films have the spotlight. People are listening to them. Let me try to shove all of my philosophies in there that I want to preach to people. You've got that on the Marvel's aspect. On Warner Brothers' side of it, from the very beginning, anybody who gets a hold of Superman or any of these characters, as I said before, how can I make them interesting? How can I actually make people want to come see that? People want to go see a Superman movie. I mean, the character has survived in our consciousness for decades upon decades, relatively unchanged until the administrative enforced reboot of the New 52, and then all of the garbage stuff they've started doing with them in films. He appeals to the public consciousness for a reason. You don't have to, how am I going to make him interesting? Well, we'll talk about that with what James Gunn has said about how he finds his way into the Superman story. It's bizarre. It's ridiculous. But the other aspect of this, so you can see that, his planning, his ideas, the movies he's got, the way he talks about them and whatnot, also betray a fundamental misunderstanding of the characters. Then you have these chuckleheads, these just naive souls, bless their hearts, they still hold to this idea. I mean, how can you judge it if you haven't seen it? I'll go see it before I start to criticize. I again, just bless their little hearts. What a wonderful little world these people must live in. Grow up, grow a brain for once in your life. That's not how movies work. That's not how movies work. Okay, we're not in the era anymore where this, like the studio era of Hollywood, where the studios determine what the movies would be. Once in the golden age of Hollywood, it used to be, this studio would do westerns, this studio would do musicals, this studio would do dramas or whatever, and the directors were kind of interchangeable. The actors themselves were often treated as cattle, interchangeable, loaned out a little bit, but here and there. That changed around World War II, a little bit before, during, and after, when we started to see the rise of the auteur filmmaker. And that's a French term. French critics of film noir even came up with this idea. But they said the director himself should really be the real author of the film. And that's just the way it is now. And Warner Brothers, in particular, really holds to this, at least, in recent years, where the director, you think about somebody like Alfred Hitchcock. If someone sits you down and say you're going to watch a Hitchcock film, certain things to expect. He's done enough movies, and he's been consistent with his themes in enough different ways where that these are this storyteller's theme. And that's the same thing for authors of novels, authors of comic books. If they're a little bit more true to their stories and really, really creating good art, not just necessarily writing for the next franchise, the next deadline, just kind of putting out some fluff or whatever. The author is going to have their own themes and their own ideas and their own characters. Gore Vidal had that wonderful quote about how we all have a certain cast of characters in our mind. Any writer does. And if you look at enough of that writer's work, you'll see them cast those different character types in different characters throughout their work. That's just the nature of writing. And it's the nature of directors being the auteur of their own films. That Hitchcock, if you watch a Hitchcock film, it's going to deal with, if it's especially one of his later films, most likely an icy blonde or an untouchable woman somehow, an untouchable ideal or a dream of a woman, the anima, so to speak. You're going to have a lot of staircase scenes. You're going to have probably some national monuments or national sites and what like that. You're going to have the character of the wrong man, the guy who's mistaken identity kind of thing. He likes to play with those themes. And you can do that. You can look at a filmmaker and say, I know that these are the types of movies they make. These are the type of themes that they deal with. These are the type of characters they tend to write. And you can say, is that a good fit for this character? You don't need to go see the movie first. No, you can know that that's not a good fit for that character. And it's not that filmmakers can't surprise you now and then. Hitchcock himself actually did a screwball comedy early in his career, before he was really Hitchcock. But he was, but it's still very much a Hitchcock style film. And he was kind of, sweet on the actress. It was his friend who wanted him to do it. But it's still very much a Hitchcock film. The themes and whatnot are still there. Let me catch this super chat here before it crawls up into the chat and I lose it. This is from Mike Pine. Thank you very much. Says, hey, Prof, what do you think of the upcoming Justice League related announcement from Snyder? Honestly, I'm scared a bit. Haven't even heard of it yet. I kind of tune out of that stuff, especially when it comes to the Snyder Cut. Look, the Snyderverse is dead. It's dead. I don't care if maybe they just released news that, it's going to continue in this way or that way. Nobody likes it except for 10 really belligerent, loud Snyder bros who bully their opinion down everybody's throat. And they were loud enough to get a Snyder Cut. And whatever recent announcements happen, whatever they got now going, it's no one cares about that crap. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to, it's gone. It's gone. And even if it just has some little, even if it's the dead fish still flopping on the deck, a few times, and you still got a few more flops left in it, it's not going anywhere because it's crap. It's a horrible, horrible vision of a universe, horribly told stories, horribly directed films, horribly written, horribly acted, horribly everything. But going back to what I was saying then, and thanks for the super chat, though. I do appreciate the comment. I'll have to look up what's going on there, or you can tell me in the chat there. But let's look at James Gunn and look at the types of films that he's done. Because again, you can look at a filmmaker, you can see their their example. They're you know what they're known for. Let me see here. I'm going to try to share this. Let's see. Should have had this queued up. I've got the other images I want queued up, but I neglected to queue up this one, at least in the right way. But yeah, you can tell me in the chat there, whatever news, Justice League news you got. Admitted he didn't like normal comics, so why did they put him in charge of DC Cinematic Universe? Oh, that's the big news. Yeah. Well, there you go. Yep. and we knew he had admitted that from the very beginning. Before he even did Superman, he was the one who did the Watchmen, and they asked him when Watchmen was out, hey, would you ever want to do, you know, like Batman? He's like, Batman's a little too, he's not dark enough for me. Maybe if Batman gets like prison raped or something, I'd be interested in it. He said that. That's in an interview. You can go look at that. And Warner Brothers still said, bet that guy would make a good Superman movie. You know, it's just, it's like you're living in the Twilight Zone. It's just insane. It's insane. Let me share this image now here. Let's see. StreamYard has changed some of its there we go. Perfect. Okay. So let's talk about typical James Gunn movies. Now, he hasn't had a whole plethora of films. I'm not going to include Slither in this, though you probably could, but Slither is a horror film, so you might say it's a little different, but he still has the same kind of main character. James Gunn likes to take main characters, and we have here Super. Rainn Wilson in Super. Now, I liked Super. I liked that movie for what it was. I like Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm not interested in Suicide Squad because it still takes place in the same DC continuity. I don't see why anybody would. But look at these three films. Super, if you haven't seen it, Rainn Wilson's character wants to be a superhero. His wife leaves him, but he thinks this drug dealer has like abducted his wife or whatever. So he's going to go out and, the joke is on him. Throughout the whole movie, the joke's on Rainn Wilson. Now, I'm not saying it's poorly done. It's well done for that kind of movie and for that kind of character because you do empathize with Rainn Wilson, and in his own sort of demented little dream world, he does achieve a certain kind of victory. And you know, you know, in that context, you're like, yeah, all right, that's not Superman, okay? Well, that's just that one movie, Prof. That's just that one movie. Oh, well, let's look at Guardians of the Galaxy. Is Star-Lord similar to that? Does Star-Lord share that lack of self-awareness? Absolutely. Absolutely. He's this walking, gaping, mommy issue wound in that whole first movie, even into the second movie. All the second movie, they try and pull out the daddy issues. And I like Guardians of the Galaxy. I think James Gunn did a fine job with those because those characters matched his style, matched his take on characters. But he likes to have main characters who are not very self-aware, and the joke is kind of on them throughout most of the movie. Now, again, not to their detriment. You know, they do pull out the heroism in the end, and you do, you know, they do achieve some sort of victory of their own sort of twisted ideas about themselves and the world around them. But the joke's very much kind of on them as you go through. Same thing with characters in Suicide Squad, like Peacemaker. I've seen enough clips and read the synopsis of it to know that he does the same thing in Suicide Squad with these characters. These are the kinds of movies that James Gunn makes. He's never done anything different. This is his theme. This is buried in the root of his soul. This is the type of movies that he makes. He's shown you that. And you might say, well, you don't know that. You know, maybe he wants to do something different now. Okay, if he did, then he would have to say that, right? You would expect him to say in the interviews, you know what? I've always loved Superman. I've never had a chance to really get to the character like now. And I'm so excited that I finally have the chance to write the character because, man, it's been inside me for so long and I'm so excited. Or even, you know, recently I've come to really appreciate the character. Recently I've just come to like, wow, I'm so impressed and I really want to celebrate the character. No. This is what James Gunn has said. We're going to walk you through a couple of quotes here from James Gunn. All right, this is the first one that we'll start with. This is James Gunn talking about, and thank you to Fanman for showing me and sharing me these images, these stories. He says, I initially said no to doing Superman when he's doing Suicide Squad. I initially said no to to Superman, because I didn't have a way in that felt unique and fun and emotional, that gave Superman the dignity he deserved. Okay. So, okay, at that stage, I applaud you, James Gunn. You realize that you don't know the character and he deserves a dignity that you don't know how to give him. Okay. Then he says, then a bit less than a year ago, I saw a way in many ways centering around Superman's heritage, how both his aristocratic Kryptonian parents and his Kansas farmer parents inform who he is and the choices he makes. He's going to base Superman on conflict. Okay, Superman did not grow up in Krypton. He was an infant when he left. He doesn't remember Krypton. He has no concept of himself as aristocracy. Now, he does learn about his Kryptonian heritage from Jor-El in the Fortress of Solitude and whatnot, and he learns what his family was and all of that, but there's no conflict within him. He is Kansas-bred American human. That's who Superman is at heart. And if you think there's any conflict within him about that, then you totally misunderstand the character. Superman is a human American boy. That's exactly who he knows he is at heart. It's like that wonderful... and it's not that he has anything against his parents, Jor-El and Lara. There's an end of Superman Kryptonite, which came out in under a different title originally, but Darwin Cook wrote it and Tim Sale drew it. Wonderful title. You need to go check that out. And it's about Superman first discovering that Kryptonite could hurt him. And it's in the course of that story, he first learns about Jor-El and his birth parents and all of that. And there's a scene at the very end of the book when he's sitting on the front porch with Ma and Pa Kent, and he's telling them what he's learned about his heritage. And they say, well, I guess we'll need to call you Kal-El now then, right? And he said, Ma, Pa, he said, I love my birth parents. I really respect and I'm so happy that Jor-El and Lara sacrificed all they did and gave me what they could give me. But one thing I've learned is that I'm Clark Kent. You know, he comes to that realization again. There's no conflict within him whatsoever. And people are going to just fall all over themselves to try to, make some sort of logical way for this to happen. Well, maybe this movie's about him realizing that. No, he doesn't have to realize that. He doesn't have to learn how to kill. He doesn't have to. It's like with the Batman. Well, that movie was about him learning that he needs to be the symbol. No, he doesn't have to learn it. That's what he realizes the moment the bat comes crashing in his window and he realizes that's the symbol I need to take on to fight crime. No, but people want that new stuff. They need that crack. They need that cinema, new content hashtags to go fawn all over themselves about. So this was him talking about, I need a way into the character. So you know that James Gunn's not somebody who grew up loving this character. There are a lot of filmmakers out there. Would somebody give freaking Brad Bird a chance? Would somebody let Paul Dini write a script? Would somebody, plenty of people out there who makes logical sense to give this to. But no, they're going to give it to somebody who has to kind of figure out a way that he might be able to get into the character. Let's move along to some other of his quotes here. Here we go. This is him talking about his thoughts on Superman in particular and why he quote unquote likes Superman. He says here, I really love the idea of Superman. All right, first let's just take that. The idea of Superman. This is clearly somebody who doesn't love the character, doesn't really understand the character, hasn't had any time with the character. The character doesn't mean anything to him in his personal life. I like the idea of Superman. And he says, he's a big old galoot. That's how James Gunn thinks of his main characters. Look at Super. Look at Rainn Wilson's character in Super. Look at Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy. Look at characters like the Peacemaker in Suicide Squad. These are the types of main characters that he likes to write. Big old galoots. Clumsy, oafish, silly, not very good, not very self-aware, but you find things in them that you kind of like. And he said, he's a farm boy from Kansas who's very idealistic. We shouldn't look at Superman and think he's the different one. He's the weird one for being idealistic. We should look at his idealism and think, man, I need to be like that. I need to be like that. You don't have Superman walk into the room and everybody's like, oh, there's that guy. Oh, him and his ideals. Oh, his don't kill rule. No, you look at Superman, and if you think that, then you don't understand Superman. You look at Superman and you see somebody who has those high ideals and lives them and shows you that they're possible and that you need to be better yourself and you want to be like him. Unless you understand Superman in that way, you have no concept of who Superman is, and don't even try to bring your crap movies to my TV screen for that. No, that's not Superman, and you don't get it, James Gunn. He's a farmer boy, very idealistic. His greatest weakness is that he'll never kill anybody. That's a weakness to James Gunn. James Gunn thinks it's a weakness that Superman will never kill. This man has no business touching Superman in any way. He doesn't want to hurt a living soul. I like that sort of innate goodness about Superman. It's his defining characteristic. Yes, it is, but you don't understand how we're supposed to respond to that. You have no business writing Superman. He's not a big old galoot. Again, he said Superman is a big old galoot. That's his characters, okay? This is James Gunn's movies, and they're big old galoots. Trying to get the right one to share here again. Maybe, yeah, there we go. James Gunn said Superman is a big old galoot. He's just, he's so idealistic. He's just a big old galoot. His greatest weakness is that he won't kill. These are words from James Gunn's mouth. These are the characters that James Gunn has written before. This is not the right treatment to give Superman. I don't know how to make that any clearer to you naive little simps who are still going to say, oh, God, give it a chance. Filmmakers, the types of films they do. You can see it by their history of filmmaking. You come to learn the auteur filmmaker. Their themes, their characters. James Gunn did a great job with these movies because these characters played into his themes, to his ideas, to the types of characters he likes to write. He's fooling himself, and he's got a bunch of people across this world duped for hope. Oh, James Gunn might be the one. I mean, what can you say to a person who just stands outside and screams that the sky is pink when it's clearly blue? I mean, what can you do? What can you do? It's insane. It's absolutely insane. I don't even know what to say to these people anymore. They want their content. They're going to put together all these logical gymnastics to try to make a reason for them to have to go see this content. You can't reason with fools. Let me just say it outright. I'm not calling any one individual a fool. I'm just saying it's a very foolish notion to think that James Gunn is the right person to do Superman. Is it possible? Anything's possible. It's possible that, it could start raining cats. It's possible. Anything's possible for the right elements to converge. No, he's the wrong person to be given this material to. And it's in everything he said about the character, everything he said about his vision for these characters shows how deep his misunderstanding runs of all of these characters. I've no doubt that the script he ends up writing will probably be in its own right a decent story because he's a decent writer, but it'll be the wrong story to tell for Superman. And poor Superman's had enough of that crap. He's had enough of that ever since Superman 2, if we're being completely honest, because Superman 2, even the great Richard Donner and his Donner cut still made choices that shouldn't be made with Superman. Superman 3, Superman 4, again, wonderful stuff in those original Christopher Reeve Superman. It's worth it to watch anytime Christopher Reeve is in the costume, period. But they got the character wrong in a lot of different ways. To Superman Returns, which again, wonderful to see Brandon Routh in that role, and a lot of the good things were in that movie, still the wrong story to tell about Superman. And then you had the Man of Steel atrocity. And I've heard people say that, well, at least it's not Snyder, doing it anymore. At least Snyder's not doing it anymore. We got to look for the positive. No, you don't. I mean, if your daughter is dating somebody who has been in prison for 10 years for assault, and you're like, well, I mean, last guy she dated was in prison for rape, so at least she's not dating that guy anymore. No, yeah, it's like degrees of horribleness it's nothing to celebrate. That's nothing to like, well, at least, that's silly. That's insane. And people just keep rolling in it and rolling it forward. It's so infuriating to watch. There's every reason in the world. Let me just reiterate. You don't have to watch it to judge it. You can tell a filmmaker's themes, their characters, the types of stories they like to tell. James Gunn doesn't have a whole slew of films under his belt, but he's got at least a good 3 superhero films, 4 actually if you count Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and 5 if you count Slither in terms of films altogether. And that's just the films he's directed, and I'm sticking to those to be fair because the director is the one who has the most power. So I'm not even bringing up the fact that he wrote and produced Brightburn, which is what if Superman was a horror movie. garbage, but he didn't direct it, so I'm not even going to put that in there. But it should be tallied in there. This is the wrong man for Superman, and it just drives me insane. Like, how can people be excited about anything this man says? I don't understand it. Anyway. It's bizarre. I do see Jerry Torar says, I don't know if you're saying this is a joke, if you're being sarcastic, but if you're sincere, I mean, did you catch the whole first part of the stream? Let's give him the benefit of the doubt, as he has an uphill battle towards making a movie about the world's oldest superhero within a post-bubble burst era. The bubble burst is coming from filmmakers like James Gunn. It's not, and the fact that Superman is the oldest superhero shows you that it's not hard to get him right. He's been right for decades upon decades there before the recent nonsense. Benefit of the doubt. This is somebody who deserves no benefit of the doubt. He deserves to be shown the door. Absolutely. Oh, okay. I could keep going about it, but I'll just get more and more worked up. Let me move on to the next topic, which is the Mandalorian. Now, I don't have a lot of I do have some things to say about it, but I don't have a lot of knowledge. Like, I can't give you a review of season 3 and what's happened yet or anything. World Class Bullshitters did a great review of the first 3 episode arc that Jeff just put out, which I think is good if you want to find out like how they dropped the ball. But they dropped the ball when they first started making the Mandalorian season by putting it in the Disney Star Wars continuity. And everybody said, no, they're working for us. They're going to change it. And I said, guys, I'll get to that in a second. Let me get my super chat first. Again, just trying to talk to walls, people that will not hear you or listen to reason. Where's this? It's not showing up yet in my StreamYard. I'm trying to put your comment up there for you there, but it's not showing up yet. So I'll let StreamYard get caught up in a second. But Slav, thank you very much, says for the super chat. Says, sounds like Gunn's describing Peacemaker in that interview. Weird. Glad I'm done watching superhero movies. Yeah, it does. I mean, Peacemaker was a sort of a dark reflection of a Superman character, or that archetype anyway, Superman / Captain America character, a dark, and the joke, the joke, again, James Gunn likes to write these characters where the joke is on them through the whole movie. And what's Peacemaker's shtick? I fight for peace. I treasure peace, and I'll kill as many people as I need to make it happen. That like he completely lacks self-awareness. These are the characters that James Gunn thrives on creating, and this is what he's going to do with Superman. The big old galoot up there with his ideals and thinking he shouldn't kill somebody. I just love that old fool, that old clown, Superman. Yeah, I'm going to write a good Superman movie. This is James Gunn. No. Anyway. Okay. Matt Wilkins. Hey, great to see Matt Wilkins in here. Good to see you, man. How much is a Professor Geek autograph? That's what I want to know. I've sent you Christmas cards with my name signed on it. You got those autographs. Okay, let's talk about Mandalorian. So, yes, Mandalorian season 3 is showing apparently record drops in viewers. People aren't excited about it. People are tired of it, getting mad about things that have gone, this or that. I told you this was going to happen in season 1. There's good writing in season 1. Okay, I actually watched season 1 back in the day to try to combat people who were trying to say that no, this is different. Because I said, look, when they first started talking about the series or dropping even the first episode or two, and people were saying this is finally we've got some good new Star Wars content. I said it can't be good new Star Wars content because it's in the continuity of the Disney sequel trilogy. It's all of everything in Mandalorian is leading up to Last Jedi. And people said, "Oh, you're crazy! No, Favreau and Filoni, they're working for us. They're trying to subvert this." And you just couldn't tell these people anything other. Every time Filoni says something that totally spits in the face of every good thing about Star Wars, or every time Favreau does something in the shows that don't work, people say, "Oh, but that wasn't his fault. That was Kathleen Kennedy." They've got to play the game. So they've got to make some concessions, right? Because they're actually going to work for us. This is a crazy person talking. That's a crazy person kind of mentality. This is, again, it's that battered wife syndrome. Oh, well, my husband had to beat me last night because he's trying to stop drinking. See, and his focus is on that right now. And it's absurd. Even when Kenobi came out, when Boba Fett came out, and that was garbage, people still up, but the Mandalorian's still going to be great. I remember saying, every time people flip out about something, like it's a phenomenon. It's like when the Baby Yoda thing was a phenomenon. Like everybody was just, that's so amazing. That tells you right there that it's a flash in the pan and people are going to get tired of it. And thankfully, people are finally getting tired of it. How much can you parade a stupid, dead, soulless-eyed puppet around and still keep people's interest? And people are getting tired of it. The story starts to rely on him waddling around. Same thing with Luke Skywalker at the end of that, I guess it was season 2. And the funniest comment I ever had on a video was totally sincere, was 100% sincere. And I was talking about that season 2 finale in the moment, like it was fresh. It had just happened. And I was saying, guys, this is ridiculous. Why are you getting excited about Luke Skywalker coming back? This is the Luke Skywalker that's going to go on to try and kill his nephew, that's going to go on to toss his lightsaber. This is that Luke Skywalker, guys. No, you don't know that. You don't know that. They're going to change it. Well, it's very abundantly clear now that they're working to the New Order. That's apparently that's part of the inner workings of the story of the season and everything. Oh, but you couldn't tell people that then. And one guy told me, look, you're missing the meta narrative here. You're missing the meta narrative. This season finale is about the fans fighting against the Kathleen Kennedy regime. And boy, you had to really reach for that one. But other YouTube channels, they were saying the same thing, right? Fight the good fight, guys. This is really happening. My sources say. How did that work out for you, Chief? No, it's not happening. Stop trying to fool yourself. And people are the wool's finally dropping from their eyes, and they're finally starting to see that this is nothing. And they've already kind of, whatever good aspects of storytelling were in the idea of The Mandalorian, shooting it like a Western, the good writing and storytelling that was in it, which still doesn't even count because it's still working towards the Disney sequel trilogy continuity. But whatever was in it that was well done was beaten down and over relied on to the point where season 3 is just boring people now. The Mandalorian season 3 is boring people now. Everything apparently in Grogu or Mandalorian story arc that happened with him having to give up, Grogu in the second season was just totally, just kidding, fooled you, undone with Boba Fett. It's okay. So now he's back with Din Djarin, and what are the stakes now? Nobody cares. Look, they're off living happily ever after, basically, and whatever conflict you try to fabricate now isn't going to hold people's interest. And I love that because people are finally seeing it. Be smarter, folks. Learn from the beginning. Save yourself some heartache and spend your time reading the tried and true Star Wars content that's been around for decades now. Stop sucking at the twisted, sour, gross teat of Disney and then saying, well, that last strip actually had a piece of sugar in it, I think, because that's what you're doing. And it's absurd. Oh, it's insane. Okay. Looks like I had a super chat. Elder fan said I did a super chat. It's on a roll, man. Elder fan did a super chat. Let me see. Where am I missing it? Oh, there it is. Sorry about that, Eldritch fan. I'm glad you spoke up. $5. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. If they faithfully adapted Matthew Stover's Shatterpoint, yes, and Luke Skywalker in the Shadows of Mindor, they could save the franchise, but they won't. Well, I'd save the franchise, yeah. Not save Disney's continuity, because you couldn't really do. There's very few EU stories, I think, that you could do faithfully and still have them mesh with the sequel trilogy. It just doesn't work, right? But I agree with you. Why don't they take, because Disney's they're re-releasing a lot of the EU books now under their Legends banner and whatnot. And what I like about it is they're also releasing unabridged audio versions. So that means that's more books that Al and I can possibly do book studies over in the future. But they're admitting that these books and these stories are classic. Shatterpoint was one of them. I don't think Shadows of Mindor, it might be one of the titles that they've announced, but I don't think it hasn't come out yet. But Shatterpoint was great. We did a Shatterpoint book study, and it's so wonderful. It really, but see, that doesn't match their agenda right now. Filoni's all about showing you how the Jedi are evil. The Jedi were a problem. The Jedi were that That patriarchy, boy, I tell you, we need Ahsoka to come in here and show us what real Star Wars is about. That's all he cares about writing. And yeah, so I don't think they'll definitely not do it, but it would be great to see that. It would be great to see that. Even if, you might think, well, maybe they could make some movies that aren't in their continuity. They'd never do that either. But even if they did, they get the wrong people to work on them, because you can't trust these chuckleheads who work in Hollywood. You just can't. Not at Disney, not at Warner Brothers. There needs to be such a house cleaning. There needs to be such a, to borrow a political term, a draining of the swamp, so to speak, from Washington terminology. It really needs to happen in Hollywood with the people who are in charge before you can really get some good quality content. I don't know how something like Maverick got made. That's a mystery. But Slav, thank you for another $5 super chat. Says, imagine not liking getting beaten by your husband. But nah, Dave says Luke isn't Jedi, and then Favreau calls him out in his BS with a Yoda's quote. I mean, yeah, see, it's fine. And then I've seen people who are finally starting to see the light on Filoni say, yeah, but Favreau's our guy. Favreau's our guy, man. He'll keep it all. I mean, people just want to be beaten. They just want to be abused. They just want to hang on and watch the thing they love spit upon, trodden into the ground. And as I said before, they don't really love it. They just love the idea of watching stuff, Yeah. Sonic River says, isn't it amazing? Filoni wants the Jedi to be bad and Anakin to be good. Filoni's got some really twisted ideas about Star Wars. I mean, and you'll say, well, what about, hey, look, I liked a lot of the original Clone Wars series. I really did I hated Ahsoka, even when she supposedly fixed, and they fixed it, guys. No, they didn't fix anything. I've said that before. Filoni doesn't know how to show character progression and character change. He just does a time jump. That's all he knows how to do. And even then, he can't be consistent with it, because even after the time jump, and Ahsoka's a little older, and she's not so bratty now, she still pulls out her bratty moments and still does these ridiculous, and she's praised for it by the plot. But the thing we've learned about Filoni is that he is not a very good writer. All of the stories that are good stories that have his name on it are co-written by other people. You look at the stories that he wrote all by his lonesome, and you get Siege of Mandalore. What? You get some stuff like that. And yeah, people are starting to see through that. But it's like pulling teeth to get them to realize that Favreau's not going to swoop in and save it all. Eldrick fans to do a Shadows of Mendor book study next. I mean, I'd like to, but it's I don't think they have an unabridged audio of it, and Al needs the unabridged audios, because Al's got some issues with eyes and focus and whatnot, where he can't just sit and read a book all the way through, with just reading. I mean, he reads fine, but novels like that, he likes to have the audio. So we'll figure out. I think we're talking about maybe doing once this summer comes. I think the two runners, the two in the running right now are oh shoot, now is where I start blanking on names because I'm so tired. Seriously, drives me crazy that I do this. Let's see, where is it? Okay, Darth Plagueis. I was blanking. All I could say is Lord Sidious. Was like, no, Lord Sidious is Master. Darth Plagueis is one, but I told Al it might be good too to do and actually this is from Matt Wilkins. I got this idea to do the novelization of Rise of the Star Wars Episode 3. I always want to say Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, I say Rise of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith. Rise of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. Matt Wilkins did a great video on his channel sometime back talking about just a review of the novel, and it's known among Star Wars fans. I've never actually read the novelization yet myself, but I'm really eager to, because apparently it makes a far better story than even the movie, and it really ties in a lot of EU stuff, gives some different perspectives. You can go check out Matt Wilkins' video about it. It was really really good. So, but yeah, I love that that's happening now, and people are starting to finally see it a little bit. But it's nothing to get excited about. It's nothing to think, oh, well, people will learn now. And no, they won't. All Mandalorian will need to do, as I've said before, is throw a nostalgia bone, throw another little nostalgia bone out there somewhere, put a de-aged Harrison Ford in there or something like that, and people will start clapping like seals again and forget everything bad that happened. It's anyway. So I also had, let me get to the super chat here. Slav says, Prof, Oh, the Jedi Young Knights books on YouTube made an unabridged. On Mendor. I did not know that. Check out their channel. Personally, I think it's a bad book, but the Luke parts are great. I haven't fully read Shadows of Mendor yet. I started it once and never finished it because I'm still, all things considered, relatively new to the EU. There's a lot of books I haven't read yet, but I just love it so much. I will say that I've been just glorying in the Knights of the Old Republic comics. And I'm loving them so much. And I didn't think they'd be all that great because they're prequel comics to the great Knights of the Old Republic game, which is so wonderful. And you kind of know what's happened in the Republic building up to the game because the game itself does a good job of filling you in on that. But they give you this character, Zane Carrick, who is the coolest character. You just root for this guy. He's very aspirational. He's got this friend, alien. What's the alien's friend's name? I'm blanking. Griff. It's funny, it's hilarious, but it's heartwarming, and there's this one. Zane Garrick himself is such an aspirational hero. He's a Padawan, a very inept Jedi Padawan when you meet him in the Knights of the Old Republic comics. And then his and this all happens in the first few pages, so I'm not giving away the comic book. I'm just giving you the premise. His master is part of this little cabal of Jedi or whatever who are pretty corrupt, and they've decided that they've seen the future, and they know that one of their Padawans is going to be the one to bring the Sith into the galaxy somehow, and they decide they just need to kill all their Padawans. That's the only way to do this, and the only way to make sure it never happens. Well, Zane is the only one who survives, so then they're just after him, and it's this little guy who was an inept Padawan to begin with is on the run now, so this rogue Jedi-ish. He was never fully made a Jedi, but or Jedi Master anyway, or Knight, but he's on the run. He's got his lightsaber, and he falls in with all these other really cool alien characters. But he remains so pure-hearted throughout the story. There's this one wonderful scene in which the Rakghoul plague, if you play the games, you know about the Rakghoul plague. The Rakghoul plague has infested this planet that the Mandalorians are about to land on. And the Mandalorians are the bad guys, right? This is when the Mandalorians are fighting the Republic. And Zane sends a message to the commander of the Mandalorians, and he says, you can't land on this planet. There are Rakghoul everywhere, this and that. And the commander says, the Mandalorian says, why are you telling us? We're Mandalorians. And Zane says, you're people. Like, why wouldn't I tell you? You're people. I don't want people to suffer. And it's just like moments like those are Superman moments, man. Those are Superman moments where you're just like, yeah, that is awesome. So I can recommend that. Maybe we could do a book study of a comic or something. That'd be fun. Nick the Brick. Welcome, Nick the Brick. Good to see you, buddy. So have you ever considered doing a study of Crimson Empire 1 and 2? Haven't read that yet. Again, a lot of the EU I'm still getting to, but haven't read that yet. So yeah. So I do like Knights of the Republic comics. But yeah, I need to read a lot more. Let me check the time here. Okay, I'm going to get to a couple, and we'll, if you bring up any other topics that you still want to talk about some more of these things I've already talked about, or you have more to add, feel free. But I did get some questions in. I did one of the shorts that I did recently was cutting out a short from a video I had done some years ago on how you need an editor. If you're a writer, you need an editor. And we're especially in an era now where it's so easy to self-publish. It's so easy to get your stuff out there to audiences pretty much immediately, like almost as soon as you write it, you can put it in people's hands. And that's great. There's a lot of freedom to that and a lot of positive aspects about sort of eliminating the gatekeepers of the publishing world. But there's also a lot of negative sides to that. And the negative side to that is that those gatekeepers did sift quality. They did make sure it was quality being put in readers' hands. Even, sometimes they made a lot of other unfair, gatekeeping and whatnot, but they did really make sure quality was going, meaning that the work was edited. And when I say editing, I don't just mean making sure you've got your verbs and your punctuation and all of that. I mean, that's copy editing. I'm talking about developmental editing, which is you've written a story. Great. You need a developmental editor and a professional developmental editor before you actually mass market it or put it in front of readers in any way that you want to be taken seriously. The better you get at writing and the more experience you get, certainly the better your work will become even in first drafts, but you'll always need that editor. And the editor, I've said, is different than beta readers. Beta readers are your friends who you can trust to read your material. And here's something about beta readers too. If you're going to ask somebody to read your work, don't set them up for a praise trap. Like, oh, I wrote this. Here, read this. Tell me how amazing I am. Tell me what you think. That's what most people do when they get to beta readers. And that's insulting to friends. It's not fair. If you want a beta reader to read your work, you better have questions written down that you need to ask them after they've read your work. And if you want to start with the general, okay, what was your general impression? What'd you think overall? Sure, start with that. But so many times people won't read my work, and they'll read something. What'd you think? What'd you think? And they're just like, they're just ready for me to say good things and nice things about them because that's what they want. When no, if you have a beta reader read your work, what you want them to do is tell you everything that's wrong with it. Not because it's crap work and you should just dispose of it and never be a writer, but so you'll know the things to make it even better. So questions for beta readers are things like, did you find it believable when this character did that? Was it clear what their motivations were? Did you, what do you think's going to happen with these two characters here? As a reader, at this point in the story, what is your looking ahead, what do you think, or what do you want to happen? You have to know those things, what's going on in your readers' heads, because you cannot be your own reader. You always try to be. You always try to write and put that sort of reader glasses on, but you can never fully do it. You need to have the actual an actual feedback from readers. So if you're going to have beta readers, first of all, you better have some set questions that you want answered by that beta reader, or don't get somebody else to read it. If you're just looking for a pat on the head and for somebody to make you feel all goodsy about yourself that day, then you really probably shouldn't be writing, because writing, boy, you don't get edited unless you're ready to put your big boy pants on and deal with your manuscript coming back to you dripping in red ink. And that does, and see, you have to get to the point where you realize that doesn't mean you're a bad writer or that that's a bad story. In fact, if someone really took the time to seriously mark it up, it means it's a really good story, and this is what you need to do to make it better. That's the nature of writing. No one just writes something and it's good, it's ready to be published. That's just not how writing works for anybody, for no matter what their skill level is. So when you get to that point where you totally need or you're going to go put it in readers' hands in any kind of mass marketed way, or put it out there on the internet or whatever, you need a professional editor. And I say professional editor, somebody who knows what they're doing, somebody who's been trained, either went to school for it or has been doing this professionally for a while. And I said that, and then a lot of people were asking me, well, how do you find a professional editor? Here's the thing, and I don't know where each person was coming from that asked me that question, so it could be different. I don't want to try to assume anything about these people who are asking, but just the general person who asks a question like that, they haven't accepted the fact that they're going to have to pay. And I mean pay, because editing is hard work. You give somebody your manuscript, your 70, 100 page manuscript or whatever, and you want them to invest in that and really dig into what the characters are doing and really dig, and then to mark and give you all these notes and give you all this feedback. You better be willing to pay. If it's a novel length, you're going to have to pay easily over $100, probably more. I'm giving you conservative estimates. If it's only about 10 pages or so, maybe 10 to 20 pages, maybe 50 or 60. If you've got a really, like, sometimes I'll give deals like that just to help people out, to help some, because I do professional editing as well. And I'll, I'm a writing professor. I have an MFA in creative writing. I've taught writing and I've written myself and published. So I'll try to cut deals with people sometimes when I have the time, over summers or something like that, to try and help people who maybe wouldn't get professional editing otherwise, try and tap into it a little bit and see what it's like and learn some things to try and help themselves get better. But I think most people who say, well, I can't find a professional editor aren't willing to pay, because it's kind of easy to find if you start asking around. If you start asking other writers, professional writers, hey, do you have any editors you'd recommend? And be specific what type of editing. You want developmental editing. Copy editors, they're easily found. You can go on Fiverr, look for a copy editor. Somebody who's like making sure your punctuation is right, your grammar and all of that kind of stuff, and there are no typos. You might even have friends that are really good at that. That's something that some people can do well, some people can't, but you don't necessarily need super mega training for something like proofreading. There's a level of copy editing between proofreading and developmental editing, which is a little bit more about the prose. It's like, okay, the story's good. You got the motivations, you got the things in the right order, you understand all that kind of stuff. Copy editing is the prose. But if you're writing in nothing but these long freaking ambling sentences that just take forever, and you've got these, half page long sentence after half page long sentence, that's an exaggeration, but anyway, that's too much. The reader's not going to be able to handle that. You need to have a variety of sentence length, for example. You need to have strong verbs, so that's sort of a level of copy editing that's more about the prose style. That's not necessarily just proofreading. So there's sort of 3 levels if you want to think about it like that. But developmental editors, you need them. That's the first editor you go to, somebody to make sure that your story is right. And that doesn't mean you've got the great idea. That's the thing. Ira Plato has this great quote where he talks about, a lot of young writers don't understand that your taste is what makes you special. You need to realize that when you start out with writing or with any kind of art, that you're horrible at it. And that's okay. That's normal. You're going to be a crap writer until you've written for a long time and really revised. That's just but what's so special, what you have to hold to is your own taste, the own initial ideas, the initial vision that you have. No one else has that in the world. Only you have that. And you're not going to be able to give it to other people well until you put in the blood, sweat, and tears to learn how to write and craft something well. And it's something you'll never stop learning. But you have to go through a long time when you start out as a writer of not being a great writer. And that's okay. Accept that and realize that your vision is stronger than your pride in that moment, and you're going to persevere because your vision is so cool that you want to persevere until you get there and get that vision out to the world as a good writer, So yeah, where to find them? I mean, I professional edit, but I don't professional edit all the time. It's only when I have time for it. Most developmental editors do that. It's something they do on the side, unless they're working for like a publishing house or something. You're not going to find somebody who just does this full time because, frankly, very few people are willing to pay professional editors how much they're worth. So it's not something that you can, but prepare to pay. You can ask around, ask editors. Look at books or comics that you enjoy and see what editors are listed on them. There's that as well. You can always hit up universities. I've found, hit up a local university, go look on their website and look for the creative writing professor or something like that, and shoot them an email. Even though you don't know them from Adam, just say, I'm a local writer looking for a developmental editor. Do you have recommendations? Sometimes some of their grad students, will work for cheaper than like a big, well-established, and that's good. That's a good developmental editing to have, So any kind of writing tutor or editor, universities are a good place to throw that out. But so anyway, Soundagraver said, I'm not shy charging a lot for violin lessons because everything I instruct will get the player to a professional level. That is, if they apply my teaching to their daily practice. Yeah, if you want somebody who's a professional instructor in something, you're paying for their expertise and the years that they took getting there, and you are. That's the thing. Most people who have come to me wanting an editor usually want a pat on the back. Usually want to go get him, Tiger. That's amazing. Now, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take that draft and put it up on my refrigerator. That's what I'm going to do, guy. That's kind of what they more want. Because when I try and give a lot of people real feedback saying, I think you need to start the story here instead of there. No, I like it there. Well, of course, it's your decision at the end of the day. But, so professionals telling you these are the reasons why this, that, it's, anyway. That was one question that people were asking me. What was another question? Oh, another question that a few people were asking me, and I'll kind of end on this, I think, unless any, people have redirections or whatever, but I'm kind of coming up on an hour and I don't like to go more than that. I mentioned I think it was last week, I was talking about the initial versions of these cartoons, like Masters of the Universe, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Thundercats, or whatever, G.I. Joe, and how the original versions that came out in the 80s were so iconic. They appealed. They were so, what's the word I used? Archetypically pure, I think is the word I used. Because they were going for children and they were going into psychology, and they're just so pure and archetypal and iconic that no matter how many reboots, even good re-envisionings or whatever are made, you're always going to think of the original if you think of that franchise. And I use, for example, some of the incarnations of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Thundercats that came later, which are good. I said, I love the 2003 Ninja Turtles, and I really like the 2011 Thundercats, but neither of those are successful reboots. They're horrible reboots. What they are is re-envisionings. And you can say in the 2003 case, they're trying to go back more to the comics and the cartoon, whatever, but fine. But in terms of the public consciousness, they're taking the material that the public's familiar with and try to re-envision it, especially the Thundercats one. The Thundercats one from, was it 2011 or so? wonderfully written and a really cool idea and a really cool story, but it's not what Thundercats was, and it's not trying to recapture. It's not trying to reboot. And let's take everything that was so wonderful and iconic and great about that original series and bring it back in a big way. It didn't do that. No, it didn't want to do that, and that's fine. What it wanted to do was re-envision it, tell a story with a lot more mature content, and try and tell the stories that the grown-up, kids who used to watch Thundercats, put the Thundercats in a context of a story that they might approach in that age or whatever. And it did it well. But I said that that's not a reboot. It didn't. It's not an archetypically pure story because it's not, the same thing that it was. And some people were asking me then, well, how would you successfully reboot something like that wasn't a re-envision of it? And, we can spend hours here talking about all the things about it, but let's just take Thundercats, for example. When I say that the original cartoon was very archetypically pure, it was just wonderful, iconic, that's not to say it was wonderful, just pristine storytelling all across the board. No, I mean, these were treated as children's cartoons, and they were trying to sell action figures and all of that, sure. And there were clunkers of episodes. Sound Engraver's tired of hearing me say it because we recently watched all the episodes through beginning to end, and I hate the fact that New Thundera came back to be a thing. I hate the fact that they divided the Thundercats in the end. I just think that was completely stupid in every way. And I really think the show just fizzled out without many good episodes there because of it. But that doesn't change my view of the show in general. So if you wanted to take something like Thundercats, for example, and reboot it, bring it to something modern, but bring back everything that was so wonderful and iconic and archetypal about it, you would start with the same premise. Don't mess with what works. Start with the Thunderians, their same cast there, having to flee Thundera that's falling apart. And they don't know why at that time, but it's, it's kind of like a Krypton thing, it's exploding. Have them on the ship and everything like that, and have them set the course, for Third Earth. That they're going to have them, they have them go into their stasis pods, just like the original cartoon, with them in their pods. And see, I get to talking and I get tired and I blank on names that I should know. Anyway, I keep wanting to say Jagara, but I think that's a different character. Anyway, sorry, I'm tired. But he has to pilot the ship, so he's going to die. But the rest of them are in the stasis pods. One of the things that the original cartoon never really explained very well is why Lion-O aged so much, but Wily Kit and Wily Cat didn't. And that's something that you can kind of think, well, different species, different whatever. But I think it'd be good to put into the story that maybe Lion-O's pod was slightly cracked or slightly altered in some way, where he aged more physically than the other Thundercats. So that's why he was a boy. Now he's a grown man, but he's still a boy's mind and a boy's heart in a grown man's body. That's really a cool idea. And that's what the Thundercats stories did go. They kind of just sort of abandoned it, sometime mid-season or whatever. But that was a cool story, an iconic story. And kids like that, right? Because it's like, wow, what if I had all the strength and power of a grown man, even right now is who I am. Jaga. Yeah, Jagara is not right. I knew that, but Jaga. Jagara, I think, was the woman that did the gravity on New Thundera, if I'm remembering that correctly. But anyway, start that. So you got Lion-O with this grown man's body, and stick to Third Earth. I thought that was such a fun story of them making alliances with the different peoples of Third Earth. That was great. The warrior women, the Burbles, all of these people. Making alliances, building the new Cat's Lair. I hated the Cat's Lair they did on New Thundera. That was such a garbage piece of architecture. It just looked like a dilapidated old pyramid. But the Cat's Lair on Third Earth, oh, that's awesome, man. That's sci-fi. That's great, You had the variety of villains with the mutants and the and Mumra. I didn't even mind when the Lunatics came in to add some spice here and there. Eventually, you wouldn't bring them anytime soon. But you can do that. You take little things like that the cartoon kind of built in, but didn't really develop because it was a cartoon for kids. And if you're going to do this for older audiences, fine, but do something like Lion-O, make it a reason why his pod grows him up a lot more. So he's still a child in a man's body. That's great. Especially the aspirational child that he is, and having to learn how to be the Lord of the Thundercats. All of that's great. The cartoon stuck with that for a little while and then just kind of got tired of it, went in a different way. You can eventually bring in Pumira and Bengali and Linkso and everything. That's fine. you can do things like that. You can eventually branch it out to where it's more of a space community, and you've got Mandora, the evil chaser, and so forth. You can do that, but you do it gradually. You don't jump the gun. Sometimes shows do this when they get I don't know what it is. Andromeda did this. Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda did this, and I think it was a mistake in that series too, though I like even where they went in the end. But they were building the Commonwealth. That was such a great setup and so fascinating. And Captain Dylan Hunt, this anachronism, from out of time, this old Commonwealth ship commander trying to rebuild the Commonwealth in this sort of like dark ages of the galaxy, and going to these different planets and trying to build these alliances and get it built up. And then one day it was just like, okay, here's the Commonwealth, guys. We did it. We built it. Like, no, what? No, we were on this journey with you. Don't just jump ahead and say, okay, now it's built. But it was like the writers just got tired of what they were doing and wanted to do something new or go in a different direction. I think Sorbo had some bad advice to give them at that point too. Although I love Sorbo, but I think he might have had something to do with that, and I would disagree with him if that's the case. But anyway, that's an example. I'm kind of all over the place right now because I'm tired. But that's an example. And I know I didn't give a lot of details in that, but again, it's because we could spend an hour just talking about how to bring something like the Thundercats into a new series that reboots and maintains everything archetypically pure about the original series. And again, this is not to slam the 2011 series, because I like that. I'm just saying it was a re-envisioning, not a reboot. Okay. As you can tell, my voice is starting to go a little bit. I need to tap out. So thank you guys. I do appreciate you guys hanging out. It's fun to have a good audience here. I'll be back next Saturday. I will try to cut some of this out as its own videos and some shorts and whatnot, and I'll be back with other things. One thing I do want to do as well, and I'll try to make these just in their own little videos, or unless maybe I do the whole stream about it next week. But people really like when I talk about books that they should be checking out that they haven't yet. Like when I did the recommendation video of Huck, people love that. People went out and bought Huck. Or when I talked about Supreme, Kay Landers over in Fan Man's chat today was telling me how he went and read Supreme on my recommendation and was just blown away. And people like when recommending stories they missed, things to go back and check out. So I might do either some more standalone videos of that, or either just do a whole stream about that. Sloth says, "Don't die, Prof. Get some rest." Yeah, I'll be good. I just need to rest my voice here a bit. So thank you guys. Appreciate you hanging out. I'll be back next week. Until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the true blue hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.